Hey there, Elvis fans. How are ya? Today, I'm going to be going over my top 10 concerts with two honorable mentions as well from the man, the myth, the legend, Elvis Presley. Some of these are going to be like albums, and some of them are just going to be live concerts that you're able to find here and there. Most of them are on CD, but some of them are televised concerts and things like that. So without any further ado, let's hop into the list. Starting off at number 10 goes to Final Countdown to Midnight, Elvis's December 31st, 1976 show. Now, the reason why it's so low on my list is because the sound is awful. It's very, very disappointing that a soundboard hasn't come out from this show because it has been filmed incredibly well by fans. And even though it's not movie quality, it really shows Elvis at the peak at the end of his life. Although Elvis was clearly out of it in 1976 and he was on a decline, this December 31st felt like a breath of fresh air for the man, and it is what should have been televised instead of the 1977 show, because although, yes, Elvis is bigger in this one and he doesn't look as good, he still is an absolutely beautiful musician, and he absolutely rocks it in Final Countdown to Midnight. It also has a bunch of standout songs, too. It's a little bit different than his normal set list from 1976, which is absolutely awesome, and he seems like he is just enjoying himself throughout the entirety of the concert, which is a rarity every now and again. It was in the Civic Arena in Pittsburgh, and it was celebrating the bicentennial, and if you haven't watched it as an Elvis fan, it's on YouTube, and I highly, highly recommend it. Coming in at number 9 is Let It Rock from January of 1971. This show is also recorded pretty poorly. It's a soundboard, but there are peaking and microphone issues throughout the entire thing. With that said, it is still one of the better versions of 1971 albums that you can get, because for some reason 1971 seems to be a very rare year to get good sound out of Elvis. And it's not his fault, it's the soundboard's fault. But it's a very interesting mix between his set list from 1970 and 1972 mashed together. And it almost sounds like he did in 1969 in this specific album. He's got a little bit of rasp to his voice, which works well in a lot of his songs. He's still very energetic in every single one of his songs at this point in his life. And I think that it is just a fantastic amalgamation of what Elvis was trying to become and what he was in 1970. And if you like a lot of his popular songs, he does them very well in this one. Coming in at number 8 is an amalgamation of different concerts. So it's the CBS special from 1977, Omaha from 1977, and Elvis in Concert. Since they were all filmed by the same people, I'm going to sort of lump them together. Elvis in Concert is obviously the album that you can listen to on Spotify and things like that. Now, I hate the way that it is formatted with Elvis's fans' comments, and it's about 40 minutes on the Elvis Live CD of Elvis actually singing. But if you get on YouTube or other places where you can get these full concerts, they're full 1977 concerts, and they have been filmed throughout the entirety, and you can see Elvis's personality shine as he shimmers his last light. They are by no means his best performances. In fact, they are some of the worst, and the fact that they were televised out of everything is kind of disappointing. But with that said, every time I watch those concerts, I cry. And there are absolutely standout songs. He does not sing poorly at all. They're just not some of his stronger concerts. For instance, songs like Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock are rushed through, which was common at this time. But then he busts out songs like Hurt and Unchained Melody. And you can just feel the passion in his voice and in his body. And he becomes the person he was in 1956 all over again for those brief seconds. And that, to me, being televised is worth watching the entirety of the concerts. And I have watched these concerts multiple times because they are so amazing to look at. At number 7, we have Live 1969. So again, this isn't just one concert. You can watch, I think it's 6 or 7 concerts is in the CD. There is no footage of it except for very grainy, fan footage, but the album itself is really good. And again, talking about amalgamations, this one is a combination of 1968 and 1970. He's got a lot of rasp from that 1968 with a lot of the smoothness from 1970, which just combines together to make perfect iterations of a lot of his songs, because in some of the songs he knocks out of the park with this beautiful raspy rock singer voice, but then he is also able to reel it back and become the gentler sort of voice that he became later on in his life in other songs. You also get plenty of content and plenty of popular songs, plenty of new songs, and it seems like this is when Elvis was trying to find out what he wanted to be, and it is an absolute perfect representation of Elvis Presley in this time. For a lot of people, this is their number one, but it is my number six, Aloha from Hawaii. Once again, there are standout songs where Elvis just absolutely destroys. My Way was beautiful. Something is fantastic. I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry was amazing. Steamroller, all of those where he has the gumption to pull up into this upper operatic register still shines through here. Everything else falls a little bit flat, especially when you talk about 1973 as a full year and 1974 following, where his voice is on fire. Some of his best music was made in 1974, and I understand that in this one he was wearing a 50-pound jumpsuit, he wasn't allowed to move around as much, and he was on a 500-calorie crash diet, and it was not his best performance. It encapsulates everything Elvis was as this absolute legend, not as the person. He wasn't able to get his personality out there as much within this set list because it was being televised to 1.5 billion people, but it encapsulates the idea of what Elvis is, and it permeates this very day. When you ask somebody who isn't an Elvis fan who Elvis is, they'll likely think about the 1973 concert. The flashy jumpsuit, the perfect hair, the awesome tan that he's got going on. He is absolutely firing on all cylinders in this, except for musically and vocally. He sounds kind of weak in some of the songs, which is why it detracts a little bit. With that said, it is still absolutely a standout show and a quintessential Elvis piece of media that you need to watch as an Elvis fan. You will get chills and you will cry during this. I don't want to make it seem like I don't like it because it's still on my top 10 list, but it just isn't as strong as concerts that I have further down the list. Coming in at number 5 is Prince from Another Planet in 1972. So we have a lot of footage that is grainy, but it's still quite good, particularly the afternoon show. And he is an absolute powerhouse in this. This is what should have been filmed instead of Aloha because he is at his absolute peak in this arena. Every single song is almost perfect. There is nothing that he could have done better. His voice, his energy, everything was absolutely perfect. The only issue that I have is Prince from Another Planet is mastered pretty well, but the other one that came out that's just, I think, from Madison Square Garden or something along those lines isn't mastered quite as well, which is a little bit disappointing, but Prince from Another Planet brings it up, and it takes the number 5 spot because I think that this is really Elvis at his absolute peak when it comes to like 72 to 77. You are getting everything that Elvis was in 1972, and he is just 10 out of 10. You cannot get a better watching experience and listening experience than Prince from Another Planet. Coming in at number 4 is Elvis Live from South Bend, October 1st, 1974. Now this is very interesting because in 1974, Elvis had probably the strongest voice he's had in the however long, probably 70 to 77, maybe 71. But in 1974, he has solidified the set list that he carries on pretty much throughout the end of his life. And if you want to listen to that set list in the best possible Elvis voice, Elvis Live in South Bend is the way to listen to it. Now, he also does South Park or is it still South Bend where he gets very angry? This is not that. It is the October 1st version that I prefer because he is in a good mood and he sings as good as he did in 1972, but with the set list that I enjoy so much from 74 and onward. And I think that this is the best version of that set list. If you're going to listen to a concert from 74 to 77, listen to this one because it is just an absolute masterful concert. Coming in at number 3 is Elvis on Tour. As I said with Prince from Another Planet, 1972 I think was when Elvis was at his absolute best, so it's no surprise that it's at number 3 as well. Elvis on Tour didn't have as many of the songs that I personally like in it, but at the same time, having a 1972 Elvis in full fat Blu-ray HD is something I will never get over. And I'm not going to be talking about the documentary portion of that because that's like a movie part, and this is more about the concerts in this show, and I'm so excited for the extended release that's coming out soon. But at the same time, the fact that it is in a visual format makes it that much better. The fact that you can watch it in 1080p is absolutely sublime. I mean, there is just nothing better to watch when it comes to Elvis, and he still has some absolute fantastic songs. The reason why it's at number 3 in my personal opinion is because songs like Hound Dog, Heartbreak Hotel, things like that are omitted, and it's an interesting set list that they chose. With that said, every single song that he does sing in this movie is absolutely fantastic, and I can only hope that more concert footage from this era is put out because all those concerts were filmed they were just edited together to be a sort of like back-to-back documentary style film. But Elvis on Tour to me is quintessential Elvis media. Watch it and you will just fall in love with Elvis immediately, all over again if you already do. And God, his hair and his jumpsuits. Oh. Coming in at number 2 is the 1968 comeback special. I don't think anybody is surprised. If you want a raspy, absolutely fantastic sounding Elvis who is just in his element, 1968 comeback special is the way to go. It's before he got jaded by doing constant tours in Las Vegas. It was his decision to make this concert, which makes it 10 times better because he is just full of passion and joy in this show. And you can tell every single second. You can feel who he is as a person in this. He is nervous. He is shaky in the first stand-up show when he grabs the mic all shaky and goes, "Well, since my baby left me," and the audience just goes insane. There's just a buzz that when you watch this show, you feel like you are in the audience in this show, and you feel lucky to have just witnessed whatever happened. This was Elvis from 1956. This was Elvis, although Elvis on Tour I consider to be quintessential Elvis, this was probably peak Elvis. Like, just who he was as a person is encapsulated perfect here. Who he was as a musician is encapsulated amazingly here. He has a lot of rock and roll roots with this really amazing raspy voice. And this is the best version of pretty much every single song in this set list. There is not a version of songs that are better for the most part, unless they are condensed into a medley, which is why my number 1 spot is not the 68 comeback special. And these days we're lucky enough to have all 4 shows to watch, which just makes it so much better because every single one is just absolutely punchy. The sit-down shows are amazingly intimate, where you get to know the man behind the leather suit. The stand-up shows are the man in the leather suit just absolutely destroying and showing that he is worth being televised and worth being in Vegas and things like that, because he is just an absolute spark of electricity in it, and it is an absolute must watch. Before we get to number 1, I want to give some honorable mentions. As diehard Elvis fans, I think you have to listen to Houston We Have a Problem from 1976, because it is widely considered to be Elvis's worst concert, which is very interesting. Now, it doesn't sound much worse to me than like New Haven 76. It sounds to me like a very common 1976 throwaway show. He's very flat in a lot of his songs. He's slurring his words. And I just think that as an Elvis fan, if you want to like love the man for everything that he is, Houston We Have a Problem is a great way to encapsulate and understand that even at this man's worst, he is still a fantastic musician. And up next is Spring Tour 77. So the reason why I have CBS on this list is because it's televised, but I think that Spring Tour 77 is a complete CD with a lot better mastering and soundboard, as well as the fact that I think Elvis just sounds better in this than he does in the CBS special. But coming in at number 1, it's the thing that made me fall in love with Elvis, and it still has my favorite song of all time from August 12th, 1970, the Midnight Show from That's the Way It Is. Now, I'm just going to encapsulate That's the Way It Is in total because it is a Blu-ray show, and I absolutely love it. Now, I will also not talk about the documentary part so much, but you also do get to learn a lot about Elvis behind the scenes and what his rehearsals are like and things like that. So it is an absolutely amazing piece of media to understand who Elvis is, but at the same time, the actual concerts themselves are incredible. You have so many songs where Elvis just can make you cry. You have so many of his classic songs sung at the absolute best of his vocal performances. Things like Hound Dog and Heartbreak Hotel are just masterfully done in pretty much every single concert that's available on the CD track. Elvis did not sing poorly in any of these songs, and he was still young. This was still his second year in Vegas, and he was still absolutely just firing on all cylinders. It is weird to see the audience in it because they're just kind of like Las Vegas people who are like dressing fancy and things like that, but I don't know. I think that that's a little bit of a dissociation thing where it's like, that's kind of weird that he is literally pouring his heart and soul out and the audience is just like, this is great. But everything else, Elvis as a person in these songs, you just cannot get a better version of Elvis than That's the Way It Is, which is why it is at my number 1 spot. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, do what you usually do, and as always, buy yourself something nice.